Arcadian Vanguard presents The Wrestling News in your daily wrestling newscast for Thursday, January 2nd, 2025. Good morning, I'm Mike Sempervive. We begin today with the last night's Fight for the Fallen edition of AEW Dynamite broadcast on TBS and Max from the Harrah's Cherokee Center in Asheville, North Carolina. In the main event, Jon Moxley, Claudio Castagnoli, and Wheeler Yuta fell in defeat to Adam Copeland and FTR when Copeland pinned Yuta after outside interference from Jay White. Hangman Adam Page pinned Orange Cassidy in the opening match and continued his assault on Cassidy after the match was over. Jay White earned the number one spot in next week's Casino Gauntlet match, winning a three-way match against Roderick Strong and Swerve Strickland. Ricochet attacked Strickland after the match until the Undisputed Kingdom made the save. Jeff Jarrett also declared himself for next week's Gauntlet match during an in-ring promo, claiming that he has just signed his last contract in pro wrestling because he wants to become AEW World Champion.
Hell, next week there's a Gauntlet, put my ass in it, because I'm here to say, January 1st, 2025, the last outlaw, his New Year's resolution is that I want to become the AEW World Heavyweight Champion.
In other results, Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin beat the Acclaimed, and Julia Hart defeated Jamie Hayter. Turning to Japan, a WWE contracted wrestler won a championship in Pro Wrestling Noah yesterday as Omos teamed with Jack Morris's Team 2000X to win the GHC Tag Team title from Naomichi Marufuji and Takashi Sugiura at Budokan Hall in Tokyo. The show saw an appearance by another WWE talent as Shinsuke Nakamura defeated Oka Sasaki. Nakamura previously appeared in Noah last year to face Keiji Muto during Muto's retirement tour. There were two other title changes on the card as Ozawa won the GHC Heavyweight title from Kaito Kiyomiya in the main event, and Aita captured the GHC Junior Heavyweight title from Daga. In other selected results, Manabu Soya retained the GHC National title against Masa Kitamiya, and Kenta beat Keno. And in some unfortunate news, Elkin James, best known to pro wrestling fans as the colorful and flamboyant Sweet Daddy Siki, passed away on New Year's Eve at the age of 91 from complications related to Alzheimer's disease, as was first reported yesterday by Slam Wrestling, whose editor Greg Oliver wrote the screenplay for a documentary on Siki's life. One of the last surviving wrestlers of the 1950s, James began wrestling in 1955 in New Mexico, taking on the name Sweet Daddy Reggie Siki, inspired by the pioneering African-American wrestler of the 1920s, 30s, and 40s, Reginald Siki. A pioneering African-American pro wrestler in his own right, Sweet Daddy Siki was one of the first black heels in wrestling, creating a brash, arrogant persona complete with sunglasses, platinum blonde hair, and sequin jackets, at a time when most black wrestlers were presented as humble, down-to-earth baby faces to avoid potential backlash from racist fans. In later years, following the end of his in-ring career in the 1980s, Siki transitioned to training young wrestlers in Toronto, where he had lived since 1961, and had become a regional superstar for Frank Tunney's Maple Leaf Wrestling. Chief among Siki's star pupils was Adam Copeland, the future Edge. In addition to Maple Leaf Wrestling, where he held the International Tag Team title with Bulldog Brower, Siki was also a major success throughout Canada, including Stampede Wrestling, where he held the Canadian and North American heavyweight titles, Rod Fenton's Vancouver All-Star Wrestling, where he held the Canadian Tag Team title with Kenji Shibuya, as well as Emile Dupree's Maritimes territory, where he was North American Tag Team champions with the Cuban Assassin. Siki's success in the United States included notable stints in the Sheik's Big Time Wrestling out of Detroit, Big Time Wrestling in Hawaii, Tony Santos's Big Time Wrestling in Boston, and Morris Eagle's Houston territory, where he captured the NWA Texas Championship in 1963. Siki experienced success as both a heel and a face throughout his career, maintaining his colorful persona over the course of more than 30 years in the ring. In addition to his accomplishments in wrestling, Siki also enjoyed a secondary career as a country music singer. The documentary on his life, Sweet Daddy Siki, debuted on the CBC in Canada in 2017. Once again, Elkin James, best known as Sweet Daddy Siki, has passed away at the age of 91. And before we leave you today, we'd like to remind you that however you consume your content, you can find the wrestling news 24 hours a day and 7 days a week across social media. On Twitter, follow us at Wrestling News AV. Our Facebook page is also Wrestling News AV. The wrestling news can also be found on the Arcadian Vanguard YouTube page. And for those who utilize Amazon Echo devices, just tell Alexa to play the Wrestling News Podcast. And remember to make sure you add podcast at the end. Once again, for daily updates, breaking news, and more, follow the wrestling news across social media. And that's the news for today. If anything happens, we will be here to tell you about it. No clickbait, no paywall, just the wrestling news. The Wrestling News is a division of Arcadian Vanguard, and the Wrestling Newscast is a production of the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network.